This week, I've got a special interview with Brother Brian Maddox out of Pennsylvania. We talk personal lives, family experiences, leadership, esoteric views. We explore the challenges and opportunities within Masonic lodges that are focusing on things like emotional intelligence, cultural change, and the practical application of Masonic teachings. All this and a whole lot more. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Whence, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry. Here's your host, Brother Robert Johnson.
Welcome back. This is episode number 694. I want to thank our contributors, fellows, producers, and legacy partners of the WCY podcast. It's through your help that we're able to do this show the way that we do it, and we've been doing this show since July of 2011. Over 10 years of quality Masonic education that's trusted. If you're out there and you might be thinking, hey, I really like this podcast, how can I help support the podcast, Masonic education, and the push to change the world? Head on over to Whence website at wcypodcast.com. Click on Support the Show and check out the various options. Perhaps you'd like to support the program in other ways. Well, we've got you covered there as well. I have a shop where you can get our producer's pin, or maybe you'd like to acquire some officer gifts or something along those lines. I do a lot of leather work, and all of the revenue I generate through that goes right back into this podcast, and that is at Skull and Crown Limited. And that's just under the tab Other Projects on our website. There are many other things as well to explore, and I hope you do so. Now, presentation schedule. It's getting kind of busy. This upcoming weekend, I'll be presenting at the Enlightenment Lodge 198 in Colorado. And then on December 13th, I will be at the Valley of Columbus Ancient Accepted Scottish Rite doing a talk on the Tetragrammaton. I'll also be doing that talk this upcoming weekend. You can always check out the presentation schedule on the website as well, which will give you a rundown of different topics that I can present for your lodge. But hey, there's a ton of great Masonic speakers out there, and if you'd like to check and see what's available, you can go to MasonicInstruction.com and you can search a global list of speakers that we've vetted, people we know in our circles that would be happy to come out to your lodge and give some great Masonic education. Again, that's MasonicInstruction.com. All right, let's get into it. This week, I've got a great interview with Brian Maddox, who is a brother under the jurisdiction of the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania. I first met Brian out at Masonic Week earlier last year, February of this year, I should say, because February of next year will be in Masonic Week again. What is Masonic Week? Well, I'll put a link to that in the show notes if you're unfamiliar. But anyway, so thanks to Brother Austin Schifrin, who has been on this show a few times. You guys know and love him. He's also been on the Masonic Roundtable as well. Well, he introduced me to Brother Brian Maddox, and Brother Brian had a unique thing that he was showing off at the conference, at Masonic Week rather. I thought it was awesome. I wrote down my contact information. Brian hit me up earlier this year. Things got crazy, as you all know. Well, he hit me up again, so we linked up a few weeks ago via text. We decided to schedule an episode of the show. Anyway, you gotta check out this interview. Let's get into it right now. All right, everybody, we're back this week. We are lucky enough to have on Brother Brian Maddox, who is a Mason, obviously, as well as somebody who is working diligently in the craft to help us all get to that place of betterment for each of us. And he's also the purveyor of a Mason's work, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But first, Brother Brian, thanks for coming on the show. Really appreciate you making some time for us.
Thanks for having me, man. This is great. I'm so excited. It's unbelievable.
Well, I'll tell everybody that last February, I think we met for the first time. We were both at Masonic Week. You had this table set up, and you were showcasing something that was really unique, and I very much appreciated it. And, we'll get into that. But first and foremost, let's let everybody know a little bit about Brian, where you come from, what got you into Masonry, and your jurisdiction and all that good stuff.
Yeah, cool. So I'm wearing a suit because I'm a Pennsylvania Mason, and we are super formal as often as we can be. I was raised, I guess, in 2013, so I've been a Mason now for about 12 years. been past master twice, been in all the chairs, with the exception of secretary, which, as anyone knows, that's its own separate beast altogether. I have, in that journey, joined, I think, almost all of the appendant bodies now, with the exception of maybe commandery. But that's coming. So I have done all of those things. And when I was raised, I got the thing I never knew I was waiting for, right? When I was raised in Beta Mason, I got permission to act in my own recognizance in whatever way I saw fit to help myself and the brethren in the room. And then I just started doing stuff. So here we are.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a difficult situation, and a little bit to talk about this in particular, just because I feel sort of an emotional attachment to the idea that not everybody does what you do, does what I decided to do. Not everybody decides to, we're given the okay and the charge to be able to do these things to make ourselves better, and yet I'm just not super enthusiastic about what I guess I would consider the lack of people in Masonry taking advantage of what Masonry can offer. We hear guys call themselves, knife and fork Masons and things, and that's all awesome. But a lot of those guys still are learning and doing good things based on their interactions with the brethren and doing all of these other things. So I'm not trying to be judgy or anything, but I do think that there's so many tools out there that become, I guess, underutilized. And Masonry itself, I think, as a practice, as a philosophy, is underutilized.
I agree. I mean, I agree completely. I think one of the things that happened was when I was raised, I saw all the things that I wanted weren't there, for lack of a better way to say it. I went into the vacuum of what Freemasonry is for a lot of people that are raised, and I went, whatever this isn't what I want. I'm going to have to make it. And I recognize that where I was developmentally at the time was, it's like thus spake Zarathustra, if you read any Nietzsche, right?
Oh yeah, I love that.
Fellow creators the creator seeks, not herds, not believers, right? I was looking for fellow creators. I was looking for people that could check me and hold me accountable. And I realized that in a lot of ways, I had to grow that tribe, right? The guys that were there for the green bean casserole, they were good dudes and I love them. They're my brothers, but they weren't the guys that were going to be like, dude, you're not doing it quite right. They would correct me on ritual, but not on my personal behavior. So I realized that if I wanted folks to be in my peer group, I was going to have to grow them, for lack of a better way to say it. And I don't mean that antagonistically, as if I'm somewhere different or elevated or any of that. It just meant, look, I have the benefit of this long education, this background in psychology and my work experience. And if I can find ways to make that accessible to other people, they can then use their background and experience again to hold me accountable. And I think I was looking for that tribe. So I decided to build it.
Yep. And I fully sympathize with that entire story. I mean, I think so many of us, and I'm not going to pigeonhole and say philosophical or history or whatever, to say that we're a tribe of folks looking to learn how to better ourselves and who come into Masonry looking for I guess we'll say what we're sort of promised in Masonry, which is to say, I want to come into Masonry, I want to give myself to the craft, I want to do the things. And out of me doing those things, I'm hoping to gain those insights, to reap those rewards that Masonry seems to offer, at least, in writing, and it is espoused by its members, and yet is something that wholly is absent from, I would say, most lodges that I've been to. There is, I think, a growing sentiment of what I would call romanticized Masonry, in the idea of, I'm sure you've read the Lawrence N. Greenleaf Lodge over Simpkins store. So many lodges have that, posted up or whatever, but it's this really romantic tale about this hometown lodge, and it's warm and fuzzy. And yet, Greenleaf wrote this poem. It's not a real place. Some guys find that incredible the first time they hear it's not real, but it's still beautiful. And in fact, that seems to be the titular or the iconic sort of lodge for a hometown, small town Masonry. And I don't dislike that idea. I love that idea. Those, in their own way, those are people who are making themselves better, So it's the small town, the small group begets small interaction and more personal interaction, hopefully. And maybe that's helping. But I think for like Pennsylvania, you guys have like the largest number of Masons per capita of every state. And so one of the things that I think about with that is, does that make it harder to find brothers in, your quote unquote tribe, brothers who are concerned about those same things? I'm up in Chicagoland. It's very cosmopolitan. And yet there is definitely a vacuum of brothers who would take me aside and say, was that a smart thing to do? Or, hey, you did that really well.
Yeah.
How can I help you, do this better? Or
Institutionalize your knowledge or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, it definitely is far in between. But also, Brian, I don't know that everybody's comfortable being open to that kind of communication. So
You've hit the nail on the head on a couple of the things that easy and obvious weaknesses. And I say easy in that, so I'm not to spoil the story, I'm close to 50, right? So I'm clearly late generation X, whatever the hell that means. Anybody that remembers us probably forgot about us twice already. It's kind of the way X works. But one of the benefits that I have that maybe the generations before me don't, and the generations after me also share, is the beginning of a social awareness that there are differently abled people. It used to be back in the old days, right? Everyone was held to the exact same standard at all times. That sounds great and seems like some sort of path to equity or equanimity, but what it really does is discounts wholesale differences in people's backgrounds, knowledge, skills, experience, upbringing, all that stuff. I think we have the benefit now of younger generations coming in with less prejudices about what it means to be masculine, what it means to be a good, person in those old, I don't say outdated, but those old traditional approaches. It is possible to be a good man and not be overly tough, if you want to look at it that way, or callous, or you can be a good man and be emotionally vulnerable. And I think the benefit we have now, particularly if we start to look at, I don't want to talk about guarding the West Gate. I want to talk about managing folks coming in and letting them know that that's the expectation as they come through. I'm a guide in my lodge. It is my favoriteest thing to do. Guide is absolutely like the most wonderful job. If you want to control the culture of a lodge, be guide. When you talk to a guy in a preparing room and say, look, there's a lot of guys that don't know how to deal with the discomfort of this, and they're going to make jokes about goats and goofy shit like that. They're going to bring this stuff to the table. And that is not intended or designed to take away from the sacred experience this could be for you. You're walking into an experience that is a once in a lifetime thing, and it could change your life if you let it. But you have to understand also that there's some guys that don't have the emotional intelligence that you have being here in this moment, and they're going to make jokes, and you can just let them go and not cling on to them. And then we can go and give you this Masonic experience. And that's where, and we'll get into it in a second, I think, but this is why the lexicon is so important, and what we do with the craft and the ritual is so important, is because it is the single greatest knowledge transfer sort of success tool of all time. You think about your Masonic experience. You may not remember all of the things, but you remember a symbolic language that you didn't have to study, right? The square and compasses, you see it, you know roughly what it means. You may have long left the subtleties of it, but for a 1 hour experience or an hour and a half experience in your lodge, you got the single strongest education you could get on a thing.
Yeah.
And that is where, if we lean in as people trying to craft an experience and craft a culture and say, listen, you've got 12 guys in a room. This represents 150 labor hours or more, all for you to have this experience. Let it be awesome. Let's have it be awesome together. At one level, you can look at it as a bunch of guys in formal wear. At another level, you can look at it as we all care enough to think you should be here. And then you can start changing the culture, and you can make that tribe. You can do this in any lodge you're in and any place you're at. You don't have to wait. You don't have to wait for the next initiate. You can go be a guide in somebody else's lodge and start beginning the culture change. It's waiting for you. And I think one of the things that we get afraid of, and why a lot of guys don't take action, is because they think they have to get further permission or further insight to make this go. And the reality is, just lead with your heart here.
So we're going to come back to that in just a second. But for those who might not know, other jurisdictions might not have, you called it a guide. What does a guide do, Brian?
Oh, so sorry. In Pennsylvania ritual, when a brother is about to get their degrees, they go through the preparing room, which is probably similar in almost every jurisdiction, but they are essentially given someone to help them through that process, where the person will walk them around the room and walk them to the several stations with the junior warden, senior warden, that kind of thing. It is the person who lets the candidate know that they are being cared for and they are safe and that no harm will befall them. When you are being guided through the ritual, while you're hoodwinked or what have you, the guide is responsible for making sure you don't trip on stuff, but also to help you get prepared properly, both sort of mentally and emotionally, as well as physically.
Wonderful. Yeah. So I think for Illinois, that's similar to, those are duties that are sort of shared between outside the lodge by the Tyler, inside the lodge, our senior deacon, but very similar. I totally agree with your ideas on how to properly prepare somebody and giving them sort of this, it's almost like a permission to say, you can let things just slide away and you have permission to take things in. I really love what you started to say about ideas of masculinity and what it means to be a man. I would say that in today's America, for instance, I don't like when people politicize human issues. So I will usually just talk about them. And when people say, oh, and they start bringing it into the realm of politics, I'm like, no, back it up. We're talking about human values here. And so, for instance, I'm sure you remember a few years ago, whether you agreed with it or not, all the hoopla that went along with it when Gillette released an ad that targeted men, and the commercial was essentially like boys will be boys type stuff. And it was a couple of his, like one guy looked at a woman funny, went to go talk to her, and his friend put his hand out and held him by the shirt. To me, I thought, that's brilliant. And maybe they were before their time a little bit in some of that messaging. But like you said, today's men that are coming into Masonry aren't these sort of stereotypical, hardened, masculine, everything is football, everything is Sunday type goofball guys. I mean, these are men who are coming into the fraternity looking for permissions, answers, affirmations. Is it okay to be this way? Is it true I can just be myself around Brian and he's going to be cool with that? Maybe one of the greatest secrets in Masonry is, well, if Brian is practicing Masonry, then not only is he going to be cool with that, he's going to encourage you along the way. And this is something that I feel has been missing for a long time. Just the idea of practicing what the ritual is telling us. As you said, there are some Masons who will they can tell you when you got the words wrong, but they might not know that, hey, you know that thing that you told me to memorize and I give it and sometimes you correct my verbiage? You know that tells me to commiserate with you when you lose a job and to cry with you if you lose a loved one, or buy you a Coca-Cola when we're celebrating because you got a new job, or, it tells me to do that stuff. And I just don't know that that's always hitting home for some folks. But like you said, I think it comes down to building a culture around that.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. And I think one of the things that's really important to get to is a knowledge of the fact that people grow through their bigotry. They grow out of it. They grow out of the things that will hold them back. And in some ways, we're going to have guys that come in and they have perspectives that are toxic. It's my job to help them recognize that that's going to get in their way. This is not part of the rough stone that they can just knock right off. This is, you came in with racism, or you came in with, anti-Semitism, or you came in with, homophobia, or whatever it is you came in with. That's not going to cut it here. We're good men becoming better. We're not going to deepen rifts. We're going to find ways to celebrate each other and not take away from each other. And that takes time. And again, you grow through that. I think that's the other thing that a lot of folks don't understand is it's very hard to stay full of hate for a long time, stay full of these perspectives that are holding you back for a long time, Because eventually they, as above, so below, as within, so without, right? So if you have hate in your heart, you're going to see around you a world of people that don't like you. You're going to see all the things and point at all the objects in your life that are holding you back as part of your lived experience. And as good brothers, I can say to someone, hey, listen, you keep pointing at the world as if it's the world's problem that you're upset. And it's not. You're upset because you're harboring these beliefs about the way the world works that are holding you back. And one of those is your misogyny or your homophobia or, your whatever, anti-whatever. Those conversations are really, really hard to do.
So as you mentioned a couple of these things, I know there are going to people who are going to be listening and they're going to go, whoa, Brian, why would somebody come into the craft with racism or all these issues when those, like, you're going to get guys who say they shouldn't have been allowed in? I have a take on that, but I'm curious on yours because I know that question's going to come up.
So take all of the big isms or the big whatever and make them all smaller, right? Maybe it's not racism anymore. Maybe it's classism, or maybe it's my education. So, nobody else, I've got a PhD, nobody else has a PhD. That makes you all less than me. Again, you grow through these things and you essentially make the big rocks into smaller rocks, right? So the big rocks are these, racism, for example. And yeah, we're going to get guys in here that may not even know they're racist.
Yep. And that's kind of where I was going with it, because I feel like a lot of the isms that exist seem to come across as maybe these are, I don't know how you would call it, almost romanticized to a sense, things you grew up with. These are your classic familial values, things you've heard all your life.
The water the fish swim in, right? If you grow up in an environment, you're not aware of the water you're swimming in, right?
Exactly. And so when somebody offers you like, hey, what if I were to say that's not the way it is and you can come swim in this water? And they'd be like, well, you're changing things and that's frustrating and scary for me. And I'm going to dig my heels in and stay in this water. And I think, when it comes down to it, I've had conversations like this with a few brothers before as well. And it's kind of like, you can only start doing that work, I think, when you're, as a person, you start to recognize things, right? You got to get there on yourself. And it's like, yeah, it's the old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. I mean, you could try, but it's just going to make people more upset and usually dig their heels in.
So,
what's your take on that?
I hear you. And if you believe that genuinely, then there's nothing to do. Go home.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if you genuinely believe that there's nothing you can do, then go home. But for every thirsty horse, the rest of it's just on-ramps, right? The rest of it's just understanding and compassion. Nobody likes to change. Change is hard. It hurts. It's excruciating to give up a perspective you held so dearly. It's excruciating to give up a part of your past. These are all things that are difficult to do. To kind of dismiss it as, well, that's, you can't make them drink. You can be present, and being present is awesome. And that is often enough. And so when you look at a situation and you go, like a painful situation that's going to emerge, right? Because any of the big isms are always going to have negative consequences. You're going to be pointing the fingers at people and you're going to be saying, this person doesn't think like I do, so I don't want to be around them. And that's the beginning of a conversation.
Right.
What do you think they think? Or what do you know about them? What is it that you tell me you know? And maybe we can work to a mutual understanding. So when we're trying to help each other out, we're not pointing and saying that part of you is broken. What we really want to do is bring it into the light, right, as Masons, and get some air around it and get some discovery going on and say, hey, you have some really strong opinions about this. I kind of want to know where they're coming from. And, what do you think that means for Barry up the street, who's exactly what you're describing in terms of his faith or his race or whatever, and is also a brother in this lodge? Well, everyone else but Barry is the problem. Well, okay, cool. So Barry's now on the cool list. So let's talk about what's great about Barry and see if we can get around, again, this discovery process and get some air around it and get some space, right, to figure out where these things coming from. It's hard. But again, if I had a blind spot that was that big, I would want somebody helping me get around it. And I clearly can't see it.
Sure. Yeah. This recently happened to me. In fact, I had posted something on Facebook or something, and I had a brother reach out very cordially and basically said, in not so many words, I don't think I can sit and lodge with you anymore.
Oh.
And I was like, wow, okay. There were some things he said that he felt I did. And I was like, okay, well, how do I respond to this email? Number one, I was super appreciative. That's how I came to it. I was appreciative of the contact.
Yeah.
Secondly, it was feedback on something I didn't know and at this point, I still didn't know what I had done to upset the brother. So I took stock a little bit, wrote a really nice reply, not intentionally like trying to be so over the top nice. I just wanted to be real. And it was a very nice email, being cordial and brotherly. And I think because of the way I asked these questions, which was essentially, it's really difficult to attempt to change a behavior if someone has not come to me and told me that a behavior I was exhibiting was troublesome. And that alone, I think we are on the mend today. We talked a little bit. We agreed that we would sit down as brothers, and he actually was part of my recent installation, going in as whatever term secretary this was for me, and it was great. And he wants to sit down and talk more about it, and I think that's such a gift.
100%. I completely concur. And this is where most Masons have it backwards. The fraternity emerges from the work, not the other way around. A lot of guys want the social aspect, but the social aspect you get just by kind of being in the room on the regular is like a false version of it. It's like the cheapest version. You could do that in any club in the world. When you do the work with each other, the fraternity that emerges from that work, the fraternal experience, the bond that comes out of working together on issues like the one you faced, is so much stronger. It's like trying to tell people, like, this is the difference between nutritious food and junk food. Like,
I mean, yeah. I mean, absolutely. I feel the conversations that can come out of those, or I shouldn't say the conversations, I should say from those conversations, the realizations and the sort of light bulbs that we have, if you could anthropomorphize them into something like tools or a giant sword to attack things, right? Like, you would be left with the greatest tools, because not only have you forged something, you've fired it a second and third time, like you've just strengthened the whole experience, the fraternal experience. And then now you also have something else that naturally comes out of that, which is a bond that was even stronger than before.
It's the adversity of the work that really is where the value of the craft is, to be quite frank. I can find a dinner club. I can find any of these other social groups. It's the people that are willing to work with me and help me do my work. They can't do it for me. No one can do your work for you, right?
Are you sure?
I have many times tried to point my finger at somebody and go, you should probably lift that up. It's never worked, but you can cheer them on and you can let them know that, yeah, it's heavy and that load. When you help a brother with his work, that's a brother for life. Sit here and just collect the good experiences over a beer or a cigar. That's a different guy. And I don't want to take anything away from that guy. Like, he can have whatever masonry he wants. That's not my craft. My craft is different. It's for the heart. It's for the long-time relationship that really can make me the best person I can be. And then by extension, the best change agent I can be out in my world, in my community, in my family, writ large.
That is something else that I'm not sure guys ever realize, that they're in that position. I know a lot of Masons who come into the fraternity. They're doing the work in their own ways. I've seen them improve, and they're active in their communities, but I don't know that they're realizing that they're builders in their communities by doing that. Yeah. And I think it's a shame that they don't see the magic that they're putting out there. But at the same time, I feel like, in a way, maybe they just haven't realized it, or they're just very humble people, but it is such magic to see when men are taking the things that they're doing in Masonry, and they're using those tools to step outside and put those into practice in all of their social circles, from close friendships, right? Obviously family, close friendships, and then heck, even into the workplace. I mean, maybe we were talking about this recently on another podcast, and we're talking about bringing values to work. And it was like, yeah, on the surface, yeah, I've got Masonic, things on my desk when I was in an office, but that's not why people were coming to me for advice and stuff. It was just because I was an accessible person. I was present and I listened. And those are Masonic tools for me.
And yeah, they absolutely are. And I have an exercise that it's a Masonic receipt book. So get this, you'll love this. What you do is you take this receipt book, and we have our meal before our meeting in my lodge. And what we do is we hand out these receipts, and it says Freemasonry brings receipts. And on the little slip of paper, it's what is your proudest non-Masonic achievement that Freemasonry helped you with? How did it help? It helped me get unstuck. It helped me get started. It helped me solve for X. And then at the bottom, it's like, would you be willing to mentor another brother on this? And are you comfortable with us sharing this in lodge? So I hand these out, get guys to fill it out. And then in lodge in the East, I stand up and I'm like, guys, we've helped guys lose hundreds of pounds or, find their next career. We've helped guys do this, that, and the other thing. And these 4 brothers or 5 brothers or 10 brothers or whatever are willing to help you if you have an interest in learning how to do this or learning how to solve that problem. And we're really starting to build a community of practice based exactly on what you're talking about by taking those achievements in the context of the craft and then helping connect brothers looking to have those same experiences or learn those same skills. And this, you can download it right on the website that I have. So if you're looking to create a great lodge experience, this is a very easy one to do. And the lodge does it for you. Basically, the guys in the room fill out the receipts and all you have to do is share them.
That's awesome.
And it starts the conversation in exactly the right way to leverage exactly what we're talking about.
So let's talk a little bit about your site, if you don't mind.
Oh, no. All right.
Yeah. So it's called amasonswork.com. You have all kinds of awesome tools. You've got a blog. You've got some products out there, a podcast. Let me ask, what got you started to say, I mean, I know you were looking for a community and for me, when I started this podcast, it was like, hey, there was a vacuum of Masonic educational materials. So if I'm going to read them, I might as well record them and put them out there for folks. It's built, an audience of people who are interested in Masonic learning. And, it sounds like there's a little bit of a vacuum for yourself. Was your work for A Mason's Work in particular driven by that or something else?
Yes. If I think I remember the question most of the way, what I can tell you is when I went through my degrees experience, the 3 experiences I went through, the symbolic use of the tools was relatively obvious to me. And when I started asking questions about things like the 24-inch gauge and how do you manage that, the guys were like, what do you mean? I said, well, do we have a preferred day planner that we use? Like, where's the Franklin Covey or where's my Pomodoro timer? Like, come on, man, this is stuff that's out in the marketplace. You guys have this ancient lexicon and all of this sort of knowledge and experience. Help me through this. And when I started having those conversations and getting the blank stares, I went, oh, okay, so they have not yet closed the gap between what's out in the commerce and what's in the craft. And then just as a thought exercise, trying to figure out what the hell was going on, like how could I be joining an organization that has all these symbols and this knowledge and this insight and not have guys that know what to do with it? It occurred to me that Freemasonry is much older than the people in the room. And so older generations of men, prior generations of men, came to the lodge with a much deeper sort of understanding of life in general. They had to become agentic much earlier in their lived experience. You had a house and a spouse at 19 kind of thing. And by the time they would join the craft, they were looking for the peer group because they already had enough of an education for this stuff to be as obvious to them as it was to me. And so I got lucky. I had that education. And I said, when I tried to find other guys in the lodge to talk about this stuff with, which the reason for this stuff makes a ton of sense to me anyway. We can get into it, but it's a level of abstraction to have a conversation without necessarily getting into the weeds about, I think my wife's being unfaithful. Now let's talk about your trowel, brother. Like, it's a whole lot easier to deal with. So I said, we need to make this stuff a little more accessible. We need to create on-ramps for the modern man to take these symbols and turn them into the self-development tools that they're designed to be. I mean, it's in there. It's like Prego, right? It's in there. We don't know how to find it because we don't teach people what it is anymore, because it used to be implied that you knew what it was. And then somewhere in the 1950s, a bunch of folks kind of came in as a result of the World War II thing, and the intellectual pursuit of this stopped being as much of a thing. And so
It's true.
now we're dealing with the decline of that, and the folks that are looking for the craft are back to those folks that are seekers, looking for more light in a meaningful way, not just that fraternal experience. So when I started to look for like literature out there, 95%, and this is a wild ass guess on my part, but 95% of the Masonic literature is meta. It is written about Freemasonry. And I didn't join Freemasonry to talk about Freemason. I joined Freemasonry to become a better person. And so I don't want to talk about meta. You can tell me about the history of the craft and all that. And to extent, I get it. People love this and that sounds fun. But until you can tell me how I can use it to become a better dad, or to become a better friend, or to improve the engagement on my community so people feel less alienated, it doesn't mean anything to me. It is meaningless. Like, go put that in the history books where it belongs and leave it be. Give me the stuff I can be better with. And so a Mason's work, the entirety of that, is an intent to create experiences where this information is transferred, or self-help tools to leverage the symbols we were given to grow yourself. That's it.
There has been an increasing sentiment of exactly what you're talking about. I've never heard it referred to as meta, but it fits exactly that. My frustrations lied in things like, yes, the history is wonderful. I pretty much remember everything I read. I get it. It's all locked in there. And that's wonderful. But like, am I supposed to read the history and then say, like, what happens when we say, well, like, those were different times? Massachusetts went with, for their 250th committee, it says, I think it's different times, same men, or something like that. And I thought that was an interesting take, but like, how are we supposed to better ourselves with just reading about the history of, Anderson's constitutions or those kinds of things? We've seen an explosion of interest. I wouldn't say an explosion in market demand for how do I use this hasn't really been met by the Masonic community in any large part. I mean, I know what you do. I know there are a couple of brothers that I know work in this same area. Brother Juan Sepulveda has done some work in this area. Brother Matt Gallagher wrote a book on practical masonry. And I think those are very important things to focus on. And I think we may land on the same side of this coin, but I think in general, the focus on sort of etheric concepts in masonry, and I don't want to just say like the mystical, because I think there's magic in all things practical as well. But I'm not entirely sure that the value for you to become a better man is necessarily there when we're reading A.E. Waite. It doesn't feel like anything actionable.
I agree. And a big part of how I came to this, and I don't mean to begrudge anyone their life's passion, right? So to be quite clear, there are guys that love writing about the history of the craft. There's guys that love Washington and Lafayette. I personally find that to be gilding the skeletons of people that have already achieved all the things they're going to. And we should be looking to find the next Washington and the next Lafayette, not glorify the ones that have passed. And so I've taken it upon my mission to try and help find those folks in a peer group, because nothing made them special than the time and commitment they made to be special, right? And so we have that calling within us now. I don't know that you're going to get as far studying the history of these folks as you will sitting down and trying to figure out why you have such a negative reaction to somebody an X, Y, or Z location, or somebody who's behaving in a way that you don't understand, or why does it irritate me so much when this happens in my life? That investment, like figuring that out, instantly solves for the rest of your life a problem. Adding to your knowledge of the history of the Masonic Temple of Philadelphia probably won't be as useful. Just
exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Well,
So,
yeah. And I think sort of leads me into thoughts about, I guess, practical philosophy and what I think a lot of folks dive into the realm of the esoteric. I myself came into the craft to look at philosophy. I was a big Thomas Paine fan, read a ton of Nietzsche, was fascinated like most first-year college students with the idea of the Übermensch and things like that, and looked into the history of all, just so many different philosophers. I was just so intrigued by the idea that maybe there was an organization out there that would help me embody these ideas, understand these ideas. And obviously, it didn't quite find that. And so what I did find, though, was a deep well of resources that I could easily access these different philosophies, and then even diving into worlds of the occult for a long time. And, most of my bookshelves are filled with things on occult and tarot cards and philosophy books and I don't know, all kinds of what some people might consider weird stuff. And when I think about what some of the most impactful esoteric literature that's out there, I'm not going to say anything bad about certain folks, right? There are esoteric authors that are just so loved by the craft today. But I love Manly P. Hall. I don't guide my principles or my philosophy by anything that Manly P. Hall wrote. For me, Manly was a philosopher who told and wrote amazing things that helped me think. I'm not a big fan of, A.E. Waite or, some of these other guys. I feel like there's just so much flowery language and it's not accessible, but B, I'm not sure they're actually offering anything other than if you only knew what I knew, Brian, then you'll see the light. And, this kind of.
So, and I think it's about time we call that out. You know what that is? That's gatekeeping.
Yeah.
And esotericism is often used as a form of gatekeeping.
It is. Yeah.
What?
I mean, you can look no further than ideas of go on Netflix today and watch How to Be a Guru or How to Be a Cult Leader. Those organizations literally started by folks in that same vein. Maybe Masonically, you might be thinking, oh, they get away with it because this is air of altruism that exists. And yet, yeah, I'm fairly certain most of those guys set up organizations where they were the head of at some point. But it's a failure. And so I, not only will I say it's gatekeeping, which I firmly believe it is, I also believe it's a failure of the craft. And this is where I get sort of aggressive about it. The knowledge of Freemasonry has an accessibility problem, not the other way around. We have romanticized the journey instead of the knowledge. We've romanticized the trip to get there as if that is in and of itself the virtue, when in fact, we should be teaching, if any of this stuff was worth a damn, we should be teaching it to children. We're all going to get better if any of us get better. We're all in the same world together. Yeah,
the idea
all ships rise.
Yeah, exactly. The idea that you have this secret esoteric knowledge and that you think it should be kept secret by virtue of some sort of exotic journey to the mountaintop or whatever means you just are bad at information design. You should just reconfigure how you're talking to people. We didn't have that science in the old days. And I understand there's plenty of reasons to keep some of this stuff encoded because of the perception of its ability to be misused. Well, bad news, kids. We have the internet now. If you're going to misuse anything, it's all out there. So the idea that you're going to give somebody a well-drawn picture and that's going to give them the secrets of the universe, that is super optimistic. And if you were doing it in a corporate training program, you wouldn't have a job for long.
Yep.
And so even if it's true, so even if there is magic in that way of thinking, the craft is losing men because we don't have accessible information. We don't have accessible content. We're losing guys that show up like me that were lost and confused, and we don't have anything for them. Go read Wilmshurst, go read Manly Hall, go read, A. Waite. And they go, I'm a TikTok generation, man. I don't got time for that. You tell me I need to get better at time management. Give me the 3 books. Give me the 2 spreadsheets I need. Like how can I get there from here? And I think the mystical kind of air about the preservation of esotericism as some sort of noble pursuit, it diminishes actually the craft itself. We're here to make change agents. There is nothing more noble than that. We're here to create the next generation of leaders. We're here to create a training ground, a laboratory of leadership and excellence and care. You've got to make that accessible, or else you're not going to be able to do any of the promise.
It's interesting to note what you've said, and I sort of relate it back to, I've given, I don't know, hundreds of esoteric presentations, and some of them even what I would consider, I just sort of completely put out the most sought after, most crazy occult secrets about like reality, right? And I just put it out there. Why? Because I don't think it matters. like I don't think you're going to, number one, exactly. I'm not sure anybody puts it into practice or believes it enough to make it work anyway. But then I also think about going back to the idea, right? Agents of change, being progressive and all of these things. I do a presentation quite often about Freemasonry in America, it's called, and its colonial tavern beginnings. And this is an exploration of people in the times they lived in and how Masonic ideals helped guide their present day actions and decisions and the things that they supported. And what's so incredible to me is that guys love the history. But I found it necessary after years of doing this presentation to call out toward the end of the presentation the living philosophy that was happening at that time and sort of the progressive ideals that existed at that time. You want to hold these guys up like you deify them.
Yes.
And like they really liked social programs like
yes.
like welfare. They really liked the idea of helping the poor. They really like, you know what I mean? Like there's all these like very progressive sort of, they're kind of bleeding heart liberal policies that these people stood up for and died for, but they don't want to talk about that. They just want to say, hey, they tried to tax us and we didn't like it.
The gilding of the skeletons of the past, is a thing that you're not going to be able to get your way around it. Right. Some guys, that's their thing. And I don't want to take that away. Right. Like if you want to celebrate your perspective on the history of the craft, just recognize it's as made up as any other history out there. History is a fabrication. It's a construct of the people that have some knowledge and then tell a story about it. But it's still a story. And I will tell you now, the best stories, get your own experience, right? The things we tell kids, the cartoons I watched as a child informed my behavior more than any story about any dead president, right? Yeah. Now G.I. Joe kind of stuff, right? Knowing is half the battle. That informed my sort of morality and my perspective on right and wrong and how to behave.
Yeah, mine was Masters of the Universe.
Yeah. They gave you a story.
Yeah.
Tell me if this sounds familiar. They gave you a story with key moments, milestones, and symbols. They gave you the inflection points when behavior had to change. And at the end, they told you why that was important to do. And it's exactly what we do in Freemasonry. We tell stories. It is the story you live as an experience that internalizes those symbols and gives you the tools so you can work with a brother to have a conversation. And so to take this full circle, right, you need to stop talking about it and start doing it.
Yep.
Right?
My bosses are always like, you're just reductionist to a fault. Well, just give me the bullets, right? Like, give me what I need to know.
To do, man. I got work to do.
I like, give me the thing and I'll give it back to you. Like, get off my desk and I got things to do. And in particular, Masonry, that took a very structured, reflective effort to slow down for Masonry. And that was awesome. right? And just the working tools and, symbolically thinking. And I was going to ask, you mentioned a couple books there, right? And then you said, give me the bullets and things, it's like, give me the 3 books. And, I think like Wilmshurst, I love Wilmshurst's book. It's flowery, it's poetic, it makes me feel good, but I'm not sure there's an action item in the book.
There was for me.
One of my favorite, I guess you would call him an esoteric author, was Kirk McNulty put a book out. And I really liked his explanation of working tools and symbols and allegories, in terms of psychological aspects. I think that helps a lot of people out too. It's no secret. It's been on like the History Channel, right? You see Akram Elias say, past Grand Master of DC, he says, fitting our minds as living stones for that spiritual building not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. So when he says that on TV and we say that in Lodge, I'm curious, like, what's your take on how do we best convey that ideology? The idea in my brain, when I first heard that, that's curious wording. And when I read it later, the working tools are my psychological processes for me. And I'm just curious on your take. How do we better convey that kind of revelation?
I understand the question, and I have struggled with this. And it's important to understand that there are levels of interpretation, right? One of the reasons, and I don't care what your religion is, right? You look at the Bible. One of the reasons the Bible has stood the test of time as a religious tome is that it is accessible at different levels of development, right? So a child can come in and get lessons and they make sense. Don't kill people, don't steal stuff, right? And as you grow and evolve, those lessons get more subtle and more sort of capable for interpretation and introspection. The same is true in the Masonic tools. And I'll show you just an easy example, right? So these are some of the Masonic symbols in the craft. Everyone that is a Freemason should know all of these, at least in general. But you look at the rough ashlar, these are readable on your screen, is that right?
They are, yep.
For me, but I just want to make sure that you can read them. So it's one of those tricks of the video thing. What is the rough ashlar? What is the perfect ashlar? What does that mean, right? Well, if you take this at a very low level, this is a project plan. This is how do you go from where we are today through the stages of development to where we want to be in the future. I can take a 20-year-old and give him that as a roadmap. Then I can take somebody maybe with your knowledge, skills, and experience, and I can say, listen, these things are the same at all times. You are simultaneously the rough ashlar and the perfect ashlar. And these are perspectives that you need to be able to flip through whenever you want to solve problems. You need to put your Enter Apprentice Mason's apron on to figure out how to manage your time to learn a new skill or to solve a meaningful problem. So you'll put that on when you need to. And then when you need to get that feedback and the relational understanding, you'll put that one on. And when you're really in a flow state, in a highlight checks at me high, the theory you, and all of that, when you're in flow, you put on your Master Mason's apron. And so you can have these conversations. And like I said earlier with the tools, it's in there. We need to be able to use what's in the ritual, right? Symbolism is awesome because it's so flexible, because you can use it for so many different interpretations and analysis, and it's rich forever. It's like a fractal. The further in you zoom and the further out you go, the better it gets, and the more you understand and the more you see. If you look through your own lived experience, you'll find that you have probably learned the same lesson multiple times. But the second time you learned it, it was because the scope had changed. And the third time you learned it, it's because your scope had changed or the environment or the situation changed. And the fourth time you learned it, again, it's not that you're stupid. It's that the pattern matching has changed. The environment's changed enough and your application of that knowledge has changed at each one of those iterations.
Yes.
This is true for every Mason that comes into the craft. My understanding of Freemasonry is where it is. It's got a long road to go, just like everybody else's, right? You're going to get folks to the level of understanding you're talking to, but you have to start with a commonality of the lowest level stuff. Like, hey, when we say trowel, what does that mean? It means not fixing a brother. It means caring for them even when they're broke. It means caring for them when they're being a heel. It means saying things that even if you're right, saying them with compassion and care. And you'll notice that each one of those interpretations and iterations is more nuanced and complex and capable. And that's what we're doing. We're creating change agents with capability. So this is all in the craft. We just have to go through the symbols and do the work.
Yeah, that's one of the most important things that actually took me a particularly, well, I shouldn't say just me. I feel like a lot of people kind of get hung up in this area in that the coolness of an esoteric topic sort of trumps the availability of information that is offered in a lodge. Like it's not cool or something, like it's not cool enough. So you look outside outside of Masonry essentially to find things that might resonate with you that are cool, or like, oh, I'm a part of this other group or whatever because it's a deeper philosophical or esoteric teaching. When even esoterically speaking, I try not to use that term too much anymore. I just try to say philosophical because I feel like esoteric makes everybody think it's just too woo. And perhaps that comes from my own deeper understanding of what's already in the ritual, is that it's already all right there in the ritual. All you have to do is unpack it using the tools and applying your knowledge base to scenarios in your life, and to see, just like you said, how the scenario changes, right? The pattern changes. When you were talking about that, I mean, I immediately went to what happens in my life, like in practical times, right? I do a lot of leather working. And so there'll be, oh, this is just like the last time I made this. And then I go, oh no, that was with a much thinner leather, or, is a very practical way of trying to say, yeah, things are changing all the time, and you do learn lessons over and over and over again. Can you tell me more about the cards that you had up there for me?
Sure. So
I know these are on your website, but I wanted to ask you about them.
Okay.
Because spoiler, my number one fidget.
Ah, nice.
Yeah.
I made that.
I know you did make these. Tell me about these cards.
Okay, cool. I went to the Pennsylvania Academy of Masonic Knowledge. It's a body that we have that brings in members from out of the state to talk about sort of Masonic topics of all sorts: history, practice, application, all sorts of fun stuff. And they had a woman up that gave a history of the tarot. Her name was Tabitha Cicero. And I was vaguely interested to get his histories, but she was flipping through the slides and going through it, and there were hand-drawn tarot cards. And it occurred to me, the guy who drew those cards was using the concepts of tarot to navigate his own interior.
Yep.
That's exactly what the symbols of Freemasonry are for. How do we not have these? I don't want to go learn tarot. That sounds like a pain in the ass. I already know the symbols of Freemasonry. Right?
Yes.
Like, I know this work. Why not have tools that I can use? So I started making tools for that exact purpose. I preface all that with, in the second degree, we're taught to go learn the liberal arts, and I had no idea how I was going to go learn math. I just was alienated by the concept, and as a middle-aged guy, I'm not going to sit there and read a math book. That bothered me, so I picked up a 3D printer. And so it was kind of like all of the groundwork was then laid to go do this. I took the Masonic symbols and I started drawing them out, and then I started 3D printing them, and then I got a better printer, and now I have a lot more symbols. These represent mental perspectives and philosophical concepts, ways that we can talk about solving problems, ways that we can evaluate our own internal processes. And again, it's all based on symbols that you should already know as a Mason. The idea here is, if you're struggling with something, maybe you're struggling with a neighbor or you're struggling with a brother, trying to figure out why it is you're having such a hard go of it. You can walk through these perspectives, these lenses into your own mind and your own behavior and go, hey, the reason I'm having an issue here is not that we've agreed that, we have a flaw in our approach to the situation. It's, I haven't done a good job explaining to him the whys and wherefores of what I'm trying to do. Maybe I'm not speaking in a language he fully understands because he's an emotional fellow and I'm, a logical one. I can start to use these tools as a solo practice to start getting around these problems. I can also then take these tools in a collaborative practice and say, hey, listen, I've done some reflection. I'm thinking I'm having a rhetorical issue, trying to communicate with this guy. we seem to be aligned, or we both are working on the same temple, but I think we're sort of crossing words incorrectly. Can you help me understand if I'm having a rhetorical problem here and how I might better solve it? So this is really just, again, taking the tools we've been given as Masons to try and use them to get around some of the blind spots that we have, and then further facilitate the conversations that we have. There's some really, really fun tools that in the process of creating these became sort of central for me. I'll give you a good example. So in the preparing room, in our ritual in PA, we're talking about how important it is to remove all mineral metallic substances, to remind you to never bring offensive or defensive into the body of the open lodge, to mar the harmony and good order thereof. The idea of walking in with offensive or defensive materials or stuff is something that we kind of pay lip service to, like, don't bring in a gun or a knife.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. But what about my need to be right? Or what about my need for everyone to believe what I believe? Or what about my desire to defend my faith?
Oh my gosh, Brian, though, I need to have my biases in my lodge.
Right. So when I started cooking these up, again, these were all built into the craft. And the more I looked, the more there was. It was like this giving tree kind of experience where there was just like, there's all this stuff. It's in there. And if you master any one of these tools, it'll take a lifetime. So that's kind of where this came from. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's so fascinating. And I think it's awesome. Like, I've been practicing tarot for, I don't even know, 20 years probably. But I was initially intrigued not by the idea of cartomancy or like divination. For me, it was always, in a way, the same way Paul Foster Case had always looked at these things, which, not to go too far beyond what he taught into like the realms of Ann Davies and things, but his essential teachings that the tarot for a lot of us was a tool by which to look at any scenario that we were going through some different lenses in a forced perspective, in a sense, almost to say, this is what I'm having trouble with. Let me randomly draw, let's say, 3 cards and see how that comes out, right? And we're sort of forced to look at any scenario through that particular perspective or lens. And the thing is that those particular cards do have streamlined meanings and things. And while I think esotericists tended to really build onto them and make them all encompassing, they are very simple ideas. Granted, there are 78 cards in a deck, and that can be massively comprehensive and difficult to dive into over time. One of the things that I struggled with was in Masonry. I was practicing and studying. I shouldn't say practicing. I was looking at tarot and studying it before I was even a Mason. And for that particular reason was, psychological processes. And it was interesting to me because I saw something very similar in Masonry where I said, wow, if you could boil these things down to exactly what you have created there, this would be every Mason's, it's like literally a tool for your toolbox. And what's more is that you can find Masonic tarot decks out there, but they're really just a tarot deck with Masonic iconography. What I think is wholly unique about what you've done is you've stripped away, pardon the term, bullshit, and you've put down, what really matters and what we should focus on. So I got to commend you on that, man. And this is exactly so. For people listening, at the top of the show, when I said I first met Brian and we were at Masonic Week, this was what was at his table. And he also had what I referred to as my favorite fidget, which, by the way, the thing I do mostly is I spin them, and I flip them. And dude, 9 months of doing this, no wear on the colors.
That's good to, So I wanted an Urim and Thummim kind of thing. And that's why I made those, was to give me like I'm wrestling with a decision or trying to figure out something. Let me just have something to play with in my hand while I'm contemplating or reflecting. And so everything I do in the craft now, all the stuff I'm making, like right now I'm working on, this isn't ready for prime time yet, but I'm working on this. This is I take my spiritual leanings from more of an Eastern bent, let's say. Nothing specific, nothing dogmatic, just a philosophy, just like other people would take Stoicism as a philosophy, as opposed
Sure. Yeah.
to a defound religion. And I'm making like a mala with the Masonic symbols in them. So I'm trying
Look at that.
to build these things again for me, right? Because
Yeah.
I want to be able to reflect on these things. So, you got 7 beads, 5 beads, 3 beads, like the kind of built-in symbolism. And at the same time, it's like something to do. And it's also a way to visibly reflect to others that you're kind of into it in this way, right? I'm into it in this capacity. My next steps for a lot of the stuff, and it's on my blog, I'm going to be putting out the full library of symbols. I'm also working on the Mason's Workbook, which includes a full blowout of every one of the symbols in case you forgot. Again, I think one of the things we do as Masons really well is teach the symbolism through at least the initial presentation. The way it's been given to you is very, very strong.
Yeah.
But I'm giving out the symbol library effectively for free on the website at this point. So you get like, here's the symbols, here's how you use them. Go
That's
grab
awesome.
index cards and draw them yourself. Like you don't need to buy these bits of plastic I've got, but if you do want them, they're crafted with care, and I love them, and I'd love for everyone to have them, because that gets me closer to my goal of having guys that can help me grow. Right.
That's so important. There are people who are going to see what you're doing, and they're going to say, that's really a great tool. And I really hope people see that, because what's going on here is it's so much altruism is one way you could put it, I suppose, but it's a labor of love. And, we were always told, oh, you get out of it what you put into it. Well, I think people that are putting into Masonry things like this, things that help us help others, it's reductionist to say that it's the name of the game, right? But
The work of the craft.
It is the work of the craft, right? We are called to pick your idiom or whatever you want to call it, leave the world a better place. It is a Mason's work. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Leave the world a better place, better to it. Lift everybody up. You always see these philosophical, meme nuggets on Facebook or whatever. Never look down on somebody unless you're helping them up, like all of this stuff. But where are we doing this in practice? I have no problem saying I have a big problem with politics engaging in caring for people. And all I'm saying is, where are we with things like standing up for rights of people and doing all of these things in Masonic ways that Masonry tells us to do? We want to just ignore all that. That's told us in the ritual, ignore it all in the real world because we can't bring politics into the lodge, or whatever. It's such a cop-out to me, I feel like.
So a big part of any man's quest is to figure out how he fits in the world. It's the journey of the fellow craft, is to figure out how your work fits, right? And so while you're in that phase, and you should go through that phase every couple of years on purpose with intention, when you're in that fellowcraft phase, trying to figure out the relationship between your work and the world, you have to understand where your gift is best applied. It may not be that you can do the things I'm doing. I hope that there are people out there that can. I hope there are people out there that do the things that I can't do out there. So for the guy out there who is playing an instrument and bringing soothing to the hearts of people that are in suffering, that's their gift, and I love them for that. Like, yep. I don't need them to be any other Mason than that. But you've got to find your thing, because what we need is a world full of people who found their thing. And yes, where you express that and how you express it, that conversation's going to be forever mired in right place, right time, wrong time. Blah,
yeah,
blah, blah.
We have some verbiage here in the state of Illinois, and it comes into the charge on the first degree for us. And a bit of it sounds like, and to yourself, by such a prudent and well-regulated course of discipline, as may best conduce to the preservation of your faculties in their highest energy, thereby enjoining you to exert your talents wherewith God has blessed you, as well to your fellow creatures as to his glory. And so, for me, it comes across as figure out what your talents are, exert your talents on the world to make it better, for the benefit of all those around you. I'm not sure anybody's like actually dissecting that and thinking about it in that way.
And so you had said earlier, Wilmshurst, the world is my lodge.
Yes.
It's in my head as an experience, as a series of steps I follow to get to the right head and heart space to do the work. And then the world is my lodge. I had a conversation with somebody online a couple months ago, and I'm like, so you think lodge ends when the book's closed? And they're like, well, yeah, thank God. I can't, corral and drink beer and have cigars with weight of my, lodge moments on me. And I'm like, well, you got a little ways to go as far as I'm concerned. The world
true.
is my lodge, right? And I am living my Freemasonry, and I encourage everyone to do the same. And mine's not right. So I also want to be quite clear. Like, I have opinions, but they're opinions like everything else. I don't have the end all be all on the symbols or what they should look like or who they should speak to. If anything, this should be just a call to draw your own or become, come tell me your story and let's work on a better one together. That's fellow creators, the creator seeks. Like, that is it. We are here to be with each other and do the work. And then Masonry emerges. See,
I knew that you were more on the practical approach in Masonry and through symbols, staying with that. And me being on a more philosophical, esoteric bent became best buddies on Nietzsche. That's great. No, but Brian, this has just been an incredible conversation. I have to tell people, because I really believe in the work you're doing, I want them to go to your website, masonswork.com. We're going to make sure we put links back in the show notes to that. You've got your blog, you have your podcast. What can we do? What can we know? How can we help you out?
So awesome. Thank you for that. So 2 things, I guess, first and foremost, the podcast. So I publish 3 times a week. They're 5 to 10 minute episodes. They're practical applications of Masonic symbols in everyday life. So some of it's behavioral analysis, some of it's interpretive stuff, some of it's philosophical takes on things. Right now, I just finished up a series on dark rhetoric and what does it look like when people weaponize ignorance to try and convince you to do a thing, or any of the other dark rhetoric tactics. Right now, going through every single symbol in my deck at this point with the 3 levels of interpretation that I'm including. So we're working on the Fellow Craft Masons apron at the time of this recording, and we'll be going into the Master Mason next, and on and on and on. So if you're looking for kind of what I'm currently doing at any given time, the podcast is probably the fastest way to get me. But I would happily help any brother that wants to talk about ways to engage their lodge, to engage themselves, to use these tools to better themselves. The more light I can share from my lived experience, and the more I can help you create the better lodge experience for you and your brethren, the closer we get to this community of practice that creates the best leaders we can.
Wonderful, man. This has just been really great, very refreshing conversation. So I want to thank you for that on a personal level.
Thanks
and
for having me on.
Oh yeah, this is just, like I said, beyond the moon to have you on, and it's been longer than I wanted to wait to do the episode. I'm so glad we did it. I know we're going to have you back on just as soon as you want to do something fun. Brian, one more time, thank you so much for coming on the program. This has been epic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. First, again, a huge thanks goes out to Brian for making some time for us, for sharing so much about our philosophical journey, talking about our emotional intelligence and rituals and Masonry and modern masculinity and amazing things we got to talking about. We had a real conversation, and I hope that you all felt a part of it and that you enjoyed. Again, I highly encourage you to check out the various places you can find Brian. Of course, he's got his blog, his podcast, which is released multiple times a week, as well as masonswork.com to check out his various products that he has. Now, one more time, I want to give a shout out to all of our supporters of the program, the contributors, fellows, producers, and legacy partners. If you've been listening a while, or maybe this is your first time, know that this is listener-supported Masonic education. We began this program very small, very niche, and as the program has grown in quality and content quality and production value, costs are associated with those things, and we can't do it without your help. And we have the greatest help with all of you who listen and share the program and things. So I want to say thank you to all of you. And if you want to become somebody who helps support the show, head on over to the website, wcypodcast.com, click on support the show, and check out the various options. And feel free, for that matter, to explore the whole website. There are a number of really cool little Easter eggs and other things on the website that you might find just fascinating or of great value, whether that's lectures on Masonry and physics or other podcasts that we've produced like the Masonic Readers podcast or Masonic Curators or our remastered Manly P. Hall lectures or even, hey, Masonic Radio Theater. All of that is on the website as well. With that, I want to thank you all for joining me on this enlightening episode. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week. And until then, stay on the level. For Whence Came You, I'm Robert Johnson. Take care.
You've been listening to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry with your host, Brother Robert Johnson. Be sure to join us for our next edition.
WCY Media.